Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Carson. I'm the police chief in Maryland Heights. I'd like to start out on behalf of the city of Maryland Heights, our elected officials, and the police department. I'd like to express my sincere sympathy and condolences to the families and the friends that were involved in the tragic incident last night. We deeply regret that this tragedy took place in our community. I do have some additional information that I want to share with you this morning. As I said last night to the media, we did have a shooting that occurred at the Maryland Heights Community Center. This occurred at about 8:12 p.m. A woman was shot and killed inside the community center. I can release some additional information on the victim. Her name is Maria Lucas. She was 45 years old. She lived in Olivet. She was a city employee. She was customer relations specialist. She was also the on-duty supervisor at the community center. She's been employed with our city for 7 years. The shooting suspect remains in the hospital with serious injuries. I cannot release his name right now, pending criminal charges. Once criminal charges are filed, then I can give you more information on his identity. But I can tell you that he is a 30-year-old male. He was a part-time employee of the city. He was a custodial aide. Essentially, he was a part-time janitor at the community center. I can tell you that he was being sent home from work and that he reacted with anger. He confronted the victim at the front desk of the community center and engaged her in a very brief conversation. During the conversation, he pulled a handgun and shot her, striking her in the head. She fell to the ground. The suspect then began pacing back and forth. He had the handgun in his hand, and there was a period of time where he simply paced back and forth in the area of the front desk. In the meantime, a woman had exited the community center, and she found one of our police officers on the parking lot. This particular police officer had been in the community center doing some paperwork just prior to the shooting, and we have a substation inside the community center. The officer left the community center and was basically getting ready to leave the property. He was still on the parking lot when a woman approached him and told him that there was a man with a gun and that there had been a shooting inside the community center. The officer immediately and without hesitation went back toward the front door of the community center. As he was entering the community center, the suspect opened fire and began shooting at the police officer. We know the suspect got off multiple shots before the officer returned fire. The officer, his return fire hit the suspect, and then there was actually a period of quite a few seconds where there was a running gun battle between the police officer and the suspect before the suspect became incapacitated and was taken into custody. The Maryland Heights Fire Department responded, and we truly value our partnership with the fire department. Their response was phenomenal, and they provided emergency treatment to the 2 shooting victims. Unfortunately, Maria Lucas's injuries were so severe that she was pronounced dead at the scene. She was not conveyed to the hospital. The shooting suspect was conveyed to the hospital, and he actually remains in custody right now at a hospital with multiple gunshot wounds. I want to emphasize the police officer's response in this situation. And again, I also want to confirm that our investigation is still very much active. We do not have all of the answers to all of the questions that might be asked. There's a lot of work to be done. Our Detective Bureau spent the night in the community center processing, recovering evidence, recovering spent shell casings, viewing surveillance video. The officer involved was wearing a body camera, and obviously video from his body camera is a significant piece of evidence. Our community center has an outstanding surveillance system, and our detectives have been going over that in great detail. We've been communicating with the Office of Wesley Bell, St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney. We do anticipate meeting with him today and anticipate that criminal charges will be filed. I would like to say that it's my belief that the actions of the officer involved were absolutely heroic. He immediately went and sought out the threat, and his actions may have prevented further bloodshed. We don't know right now what the intentions were of the gunman. After the shooting, he did not flee. He did not attempt to leave the building. So I don't know if he was waiting for police officers to arrive on the scene. I don't know if he was trying to figure out what his next actions would be. But I think the fact that the officer got into the building as quickly as he did very well could have prevented further tragedy. I would like to say that it was initially a very chaotic scene. There were well over 150 people inside the community center when the shooting occurred. Our police department has provided active shooter training to the employees of the Parks and Recreation Department, and I know that the employees of Parks and Recreation responded very well to the situation. I know that there were a lot of city employees that took action to make sure that families and children were concealed, either helping them hide in closets or in rooms throughout the building. I'm also aware of other employees that actually helped children get out of the building. So I think, again, it was a situation where we knew we had a shooter in the building. We don't know what his intentions were, but I think the staff handled themselves exemplary and also probably helped protect some of the families and children that were still in the building. I know there was some frustration on the part of maybe the media and some people that were outside wanting to know what was going on. There were parents there to pick up children or wanting to be reunited with their children. But I will say that our absolute first priority was to protect the families and the children that were inside the community center, do a sweep of the interior, make sure we didn't have anyone else that was shot or injured that needed medical attention. Obviously, we had to provide medical attention and assist the fire department providing medical attention to the 2 people that we knew were shot. And then, of course, we also had to focus attention on preserving the crime scene and preserving the evidence that was there. So the building, the community center is 92,000 square feet. It took quite a bit of time to go through the building and find all the people that were hiding in various locations. And so that is one of the reasons why it took a while for us to be able to explain to everybody what had happened and to get kids reunited with their families. I know that in the community center at the time of the shooting, there was pickleball, volleyball, karate classes. There was a large number of people in the swimming pool. There were people in the fitness center. There were children in the play center. So again, it was a busy place, and fortunately, there were no other residents or children that were injured. We know that the suspect fired multiple times, and it's absolutely amazing that the police officer was not hit, and I'm grateful that he was able to return fire and resolve the situation without anyone else being hurt or injured. I know that Mayor Mike Moeller, our mayor, he responded to the scene along with our city administrator and other city officials. And Mayor Moeller will have a statement that he will be releasing later today and may have some additional information. So that is the update that I have, and I do have a few minutes for questions.
Chief, you mentioned that Ms. Lucas was an employee. What again was her job with the city?
She was a customer relations specialist. She basically worked at the front desk at the community center. She's held other positions in the city with her 7 years of employment, and she was also considered the senior employee and the acting supervisor at the community center.
Ask the janitor to leave?
You know what? I'm not really at liberty to go into detail on that. That's a personnel and disciplinary matter, and before I can release more information, I'd rather pass on that. But we know that he was asked to leave, and he reacted with anger, and he confronted Maria at the front desk.
Why was he asked to leave? What happened?
Again, that's a personnel matter, a disciplinary matter, and I'm not going to go into detail on that right now. There will be more information, I think, at a later time.
Okay, and in response to this tragedy, will there be new security measures set up?
I think whenever you have something like this, and I know whenever our police department's involved in a critical incident, we always go back and we review our actions. We bring in the people involved. We process it with them. We ask what worked, what didn't work, what could we have done better, and I know in this situation we have a lot of video to review, and we will definitely be critiquing not only our actions but the actions of all city employees, and we're going to be looking for lessons learned. Is there something, and you go back, obviously, and you want to know, were there red flags? Were there things that maybe indicators that something like this could possibly occur? So these are all the things that we'll look at, and obviously we want to know, is there anything that we could have done differently or done better? And that will take time. He worked for the city for just under 3 years.
Did the janitor have a history of just behavior problems on the job?
I am not aware of and again, it's still very early. You know, we're not even close to the 24-hour mark yet. And there's a lot of questions I think that we'll be asking, and obviously we'll have more answers. The investigation still, in my mind, is early, and there's a lot of things that we want to
Chief, you
find out.
mentioned you mentioned a gun battle between the officer and the suspect. Did it end right there near the desk where the employee was shot, or did the suspect leave that area and run somewhere else?
The shooting started as the officer was coming in the front door, and the suspect was near the front desk, but it actually ended in another part of the building on the first floor. It ended south of the front desk, and I don't have the exact measurements, but it was in another part of the building.
Did the officer lose sight of him at any point?
The officer actually pursued him, and again, I think the officer reacted with incredible courage and bravery. He was by himself. He had radioed for assistance. Help was on its way. They had put out an officer in need of aid call, and we actually had surrounding agencies that were sending cars. But during the gun battle, the officer was in there all by himself, and he stayed with the suspect and kept him engaged until the suspect was down and no longer a threat.
How many minutes would you guess passed?
Oh, it was a matter of quite a few seconds, and it probably seemed like an eternity for the officer, but and I don't have the exact timeline, but it wasn't minutes, but it was quite a few seconds.
Do you know if he had a gun legally?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if he had a gun legally?
And that's obviously something that we'll want to determine. I am not aware of any criminal history. I'm not aware of anything that would prohibit this person from owning a gun. However, our city has a policy about bringing firearms into the workplace, and at the very, very least, that was against city policy. Unless you're a police officer,
Is that what he was asked to leave?
no.
Could you tell him to be able to walk back out to the car to retrieve the gun or not?
And again, I don't have all the details. I don't have the specific timeline. We're still early in the investigation, and we'll have that answer, but I don't have it for you right now.
Chief, you mentioned several rounds. It was multiple shots that were fired. What kind of a weapon did he have?
He had a semi-automatic handgun. I believe it was a 9mm.
Do you have any update on when the community center will reopen, and will there be any kind of counseling for all of the people who work there and were witnesses to this?
Right now, the community center is closed. It is still considered a crime scene. Our detectives were there all night long, processing, recovering evidence. They think they are just about finished. They want to do one more walkthrough and make sure that there's nothing that they missed. At that point, we'll release the crime scene, but there still needs to be some cleanup. There's a lot of broken glass, and there's cleanup. So I anticipate the community center will be closed until further notice. It will absolutely be closed for the rest of the day, and we'll just have to take it day by day. And then what was your second question?
Will there be any kind of counseling for the people involved, the city employees?
Yes, there's a couple of different types of counseling that will be offered. Our police department and our fire department are involved in a critical incident stress management debriefing that is geared toward first responders. So We know that that will be made available to our first responders that responded to the scene, as well as the fire and EMS. And I would anticipate those employees will be involved in that debriefing. But I know that our human resources, our city administrator, and our human resources has lined up some other counseling, I believe through our EAP program, and is making that available, because we had a lot of employees, civilian employees at the community center that were obviously impacted by this tragedy. So we'll definitely make those services available to them.
And what can you tell us about the police officer? How long has he been with the department?
We are not releasing the identity of the police officer. He is a relatively new police officer. He has only been out of the police academy just over a year. I believe he's been out of the police academy 14 months. But again, he responded like an experienced veteran. I cannot tell you how proud I am of how he handled this situation.
With something like this, is there anything that you want to say to the general public in terms of, understandably so, it didn't just rattle employees who were there, but it's rattled the entire Maryland Heights community. With something like this, it seems like a workplace dispute. I think it's scary for people because they imagine something like that could happen.
I mean, it is scary. Maryland Heights is a wonderful community to live and to work and to play. We've got a lot of great things going on in this community. We don't have a lot of violent crime. But unfortunately, these types of things can happen in any community. And Maryland Heights is not immune from workplace violence. And I know we will continue to offer training to businesses in our community, as well as our own employees, on how to respond to these situations, because the reality is it can happen in any community.
Can you spell again the victim's name and her age?
Yes, Maria, Maria, Lucas, Lucas. She was 45 years old, and she lived in Olivet, Missouri.
Chief, did you happen to know her, or have you spoken to anyone who did?
You know what? We have less than 200 employees in the city, and all of our employees really know. We see each other at various activities, and I know the community center just had a World Fest celebration over the weekend. A lot of our police officers were up there interacting with Parks and Recreation employees. So these are employees that we know and we've seen before. Yes.
Just curious if you could tell us anything about her.
I think there's more. There's a lot more information, I think, that will come out on her, and I don't want to go into a lot of details, but everything I've heard about her is she was a wonderful person. And I know there are a lot of people in this community, because she worked at the front desk. There are a lot of our residents that interacted with her on a daily basis and can tell you, what a pleasant, cheerful person she was. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more that comes out, but I know that she's highly thought of, and really it's a tragedy that this happened to such a good person. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. And as I said before, Mayor Moeller is going to have a statement with some additional information that he'll release later today. Thank you very much.